Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I am continuing my trek through Everybody Loves Raymond, Season 6. We're now on Episode 13, Tissues. Another episode I've enjoyed ever since I saw it in syndication in the early 2000s. Seems like a lot of the ones I remember are from this season and then sporadic throughout the first couple seasons. Now, before we get into the video, just in case any of you are wondering, like, hey, what's with the different background? Well, that's because this episode is being recorded. Well, it's not live. I was going to say recorded live, but it's being recorded. And if I can be forgiven if I move the camera real quick, hold on, I'm bringing the app thing up so I can actually see where I'm moving it. It's been recorded. Oh, dang it. You can't really tell, but dang it. That was a fail. It's being recorded from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm here for Unicon 2022. It is Friday, so the first day of the con as I'm recording this. So I'm in my hotel room and I'll animate up. So next couple videos you're probably going to see live from this one because I already watched this episode and the next one. I'm getting ready to record them right here. Now, before I get too far into the review proper, just a reminder that if you want to support the channel, both the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. Want to do one-off support or one-off request? Go the PayPal route. You want to continuously support the channel and gain access to videos early and also be able to suggest topics for future videos such as top 10 lists? Go the Patreon route. Either way, your support is appreciated. Tissues. Now, there's not really a lot to say about this based on IMDb, other than it was featured in that first 6 years video I already did my thoughts on. It is written by Mike Royce, which is a name I've mentioned a couple times throughout the last couple seasons. I mean, Debra's Workout, Marie and Frank's New Friends, The Author, Super Bowl, and of course from this season he did Ray's Ring. And by the end of it, he's going to do the last flashback episode, which is The First Time. And of course, he's also one of the writers for the finale. So he's not as prolific as some of the other names that have been brought up repeatedly, but he is semi-prolific. Enough there that, you know his work just based on the episode names. Now, this is another Ray and Debra-centric episode based on a fight of theirs, so you can see something like this happen in real life. And it's all over them making decisions. Now, the prologue for the episode is we find out that they have ants again. Or should I say they have ants because they had termites before. Ray doesn't want to call the guy. Debra's insistent on it. And they decide instead of taking out more food that the ants might get into, they're just going to go out to eat. Which Ray doesn't want to do, which... It's not the fact that they're going out to eat that Ray doesn't like. He doesn't want to go out with the kids. And given how we see how excited they get and how hypergenic they get, you can kind of understand why Ray doesn't want to go out with the kids. I mean, he tries everything to present a different thing. How about the mom watches the kids and me and you go out to dinner? Now, it kind of looks like Debra might be receptive to this, but Marie, being her typical Marie self with her snide comics, oh, they can use a home-cooked meal, completely puts a kibosh on any and all likelihood of them going out to dinner. So everyone goes out to dinner. Then we see the aftermath. The kids are all excited. They got whistles. Ray and Debra are coming in all defeated. They tell the kids to go upstairs, get dressed, and behave. Ray has a box of takeout with them on there, and they both sit down on the couch. And the way they're sitting there, you can tell they're all defeated and tired from having to deal with the kids at Nemo's. And Ray is lamenting it out loud. He's like, I can't remember a time the kids behave worse. But he's like, oh yeah, a bad night. And the way that Ray Romano plays it off, you can tell that he's not just lamenting it. He's also rubbing a little bit of the salt into the wounds of his wife. And to add on to it, he's got chocolate cake. Now, Debra tries to make him apologize here. Now, although you've heard me bash Ray a lot on this show, calling him a man-child amongst other things, saying he's an okay father, and that's putting it lightly, and that he has a lot of issues he needs to work with, I have defended him on a couple points. This is another one I'm going to defend because there's no reason Ray needs to apologize here. Maybe for rubbing it in as a slight apology, but the whole other thing that she's trying to get him to apologize for tonight, unless there's something that happened at the restaurant that he did that we did not see or he didn't help. But that's just me just thinking that maybe there's something we didn't see. But from what we see on screen and what they talk about, other than the salt wound, there's nothing that Rainey really needs to apologize for. So it's just Debra doing the whole thing of, oh, this is all your fault that my idea didn't go up well. I'm going to make you apologize. Which I know from a writing standpoint seems to be a typical thing they mainly prescribe to female characters, but it is something that could be gender indeterminate, to steal a line that Robert said in an earlier episode. It's a thing that's like, no genders matter, I can apply to anybody. But here they're applying it to Debra. And of course, given her characterization in certain episodes, you shouldn't be a surprise. Now, Ray is not going to apologize. And I love the way that Ray Romano plays this, where he's like being a little demure, but it's in a mocking way. His sarcasm you can't help but smile at. And he's like, what, didn't you get what you wanted? And then he points out, I had another idea, you rejected it. And then it goes into the real crux of the fight, is that every time they have to make a decision as a couple, Debra's the one that makes it. Ray will put in a thing or question it, but then she will waffle stomp over it. Which, it's one of those things that you can have a mixed view on, because, like I said earlier, from what we've seen Ray do, you can kind of understand why he might not be the best person to leave certain decisions in his hands. However, given it's a marriage, and he does bring up a good point, and it's something that I really do prescribe when I analyze relationships on this show and other shows, and another thing is that marriage is a two-way street. Certain decisions you can make solo, and other ones you should make as a couple, or at least run by your partner. Like, we've seen in other instances where he wants to do the golf trip, he has to run that by Debra, which makes sense. I mean, even if they had no kids, at least giving her a heads up. Like, hey, me and the boys are going to go to blah, blah, blah for a while. Like, okay. With kids, you got to really tell them, like, hey, does that work? Now, in a couple decision, deciding where to go for dinner, where to go for vacation, those are decisions you make together. Or improvements on the house. Those are ones you make together. Now, based on what we hear Ray say, and Debra doesn't 100% dispute most of it, it looks like Ray's right. Although, Debra's credit, she does kind of counter some of it, like when he brings up the drapes. And she's like, I didn't hear a peep out of you. Now, Ray, to his argument, he says, really, those drapes? Which, I have to side with Debra a little bit here, because really those drapes does not really say that you don't like them. However, what Ray says Debra's response was kind of shows that even if he had brought up a legit complaint about him, like he does here, or he says it doesn't even match the wall pattern, her response was that he probably would not have been heard. So it's one of those things where you could see that the biggest flaw in the relationship between Ray and Debra is communication. We know they love each other, we know that they can get heart to heart, but a lot of times it results in a eruption to get that heart to heart. They really need to work on communication. Of course, it's a sitcom relationship, so there has to be friction in order for there to be humor, so we just go with it. But as I've said a couple times, if this was a real-life relationship, the friends would be questioning, like, Debra, I think you and Ray need to see counseling, or you need to... And Ray does bring up the fact that he's always wanted a dog, so a nice little wink-wink to season 1 without it being a full-on reference. Because even back then he wanted a dog, but Debra was like, no. And he's like, if we don't have it, hey, if everything's your decision, we might have one. And he calls the dog Floppy, which is a weird name for a dog, but it's an imaginary one. And when Debra scoffs at it, I just love Ray's response. He's like, yeah, Floppy, you can't even let me name my imaginary dog. Now it ends with them sleeping separately. And of course, given the whole ant situation, it's going to be a little hard for Ray. But they do reconcile the next morning, and Debra decides, like, you know what? I'm going to let you make more decisions. So he gets to make the family trip decision. And this leads into the scene that explains why this episode is called Tissues. Because Ray goes to the store to pick up some stuff. One is to get brochures for the trip he's planning. And he also picks up a couple other things. Most of it's good. And the thing that leads to the last argument is the tissues he buys. I mean, he gets a good deal on them. But Deborah's looking at him as like it's a box and all that. Now, before I talk about the whole little discussion they have about tissues here, I'm going to say I'm on Ray's side here. Because the way that the other characters talk about it, it seems like they're dissecting it way too much. Deborah saying these are not the ones I get. They don't match your bathroom. Or even Marie going, I don't buy them. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. I think accents like tissues are one of the most important decisions in the look and character of a household. Now, as a kid, that's one of those things I'm like, what the heck does that mean? As an adult, I'm still going, what the heck does that mean? But I also have the added thing of most important accents. Okay, I can understand if you're talking about toilet paper, if you're going with a toiletry. I can understand like the type of towels you have hanging in your bathroom, maybe a welcome mat, some other stuff you have laying in the kitchen. But tissues? Really? You think people are really going to judge you based on the fact that you got the little box one that already has lotion on them, or you got the Kirkland or Walmart brand or something like that, or even ones you got at Dollar Tree versus the highfalutin ones that are actually the brand name Kleenex? You think anyone is going to care about that? And that's why I side with Ray here, because as he puts it, you do realize people use them to blow your nose. And I just love how Marie has to stoop to a ridiculous argument to try to counter that. Yeah, but the right tissue box invites them to do so. Not really, Marie. Not really. If you gotta blow your nose, you're gonna blow your nose. You're just gonna grab it out of the tissue. You're not gonna care what type of box it's in. Unless you have some type of allergy or something, but that's a whole other thing. Now, due to all of this and people coming in, and even Frank having a little comment about the lotion tissues, Ray kicks everybody out, and he goes on a little hissy fit and decides to cook his own meal. And this leads to the funny thing at the very end of the episode where he accidentally sets the tissues and the drapes on fire. How this happened was, one of the things he bought was this one little all-natural bug spray, which I actually prefer buying the all-natural bug sprays myself. It's the one that's made like orange oil. And he sprays it in the kitchen. I think you can already see where this is going. Now, when he goes to cook his own meal, he opens up a can of soup, puts it in there, and puts it on the stove to heat. Now he has the setting a little bit too high. So you can imagine, flame gets in the right area, lights the oil goes across, catches the bag on fire, goes across a little bit more on the oil, catches the drapes on fire. Now, I did the humor of this. When this is going on, Ray's on the phone with Gianni talking about golf plans for the next day, and they're talking about, Orange Sky at Night, Sailor's Delight, going on with that. And then when Ray comes in, he sees the fire, his first thoughts are, my tissues! This whole thing, Ray plays this very well. And this is the way a lot of people would react. Now, of course, he goes to go get a fire hose, which this is where the little thing that they mentioned early on about the fire hose the garden hose being too short works. Now, I get both sides in that because, people do squirt it over, but people also buy a longer hose than that. That's like a hose only for like a short distance, or you need to connect a longer hose. I can't think of any of the hoses I have at my house, and we got I think 4 of them at least that are that short. All of them have a pretty good reach on them. But it's a little bit of a Chekhov's gun because it's brought up there, and then it comes in here, and it doesn't work. And he's trying to spray, and then Debra comes down, like, what? There's a fire! And Debra takes charge. She sees the fire, reaches underneath the counter, and pulls out a fire extinguisher. Which the only side thing I'll be here is but how long you guys have lived in that house? 1, Ray hasn't noticed there's a fire extinguisher down there? Or 2, you never told him there's one there, Debra? Now she puts out the fire, and then she looks over at Ray with her usual look. And the thing I love about that is that the way it's shot, Ray slowly, puts his thumb to get the water to stop flowing the way it is. But the way it is, it's the stream that he has is slowly going. A nice little visual representation of deflated manhood and deflated ego. Just love it. And the line he says afterwards, it's a pretty good one. And there's not really much you could say to defend yourself in that situation, but you got to get a one-liner in. It's like, well, it took care of the ants. Now, in the blooper reel, instead of that, he's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. It comes off as him trying to think of one. I don't know if he said it before or after the ant one, because it's been a while since I watched the reel, but it's a perfect one. And of course, the epilogue is them meeting with an insurance adjuster, trying to get new drapes and all that. Debra looking it over. Ray scoots over to look at it, and she looks and gives him a death glare, and then he moves back into his place. Now, for the humor of the episode, we get it, but relationship-wise, it's like, no, there's no reason you should do that, Debra. I mean, it was an accident, but that could have happened at any time. Maybe not that outrageous, but it could happen. I mean, even if it wasn't that, he probably would have burnt the soup. Something else like that. But for the ending of this episode, it is the perfect epilogue ending. And it wasn't cut out in syndication. I think there's only like a couple little brief moments, bits of dialogue that might have been cut out for this one. But overall, it is a pretty fun episode. Another one that I do recommend. It will probably be on the VHS list. Which, by the way I'm doing it, it is going to be season 1 through 6, and then the last 3 seasons. I figure that would be the best way to do it, because as I put it out, 3 through 6 are the prime Ray years. So you know what? Maybe I'll actually do it like seasons 1 through the first 2 seasons, then seasons 3 through 6, which I consider the prime era. Oh, and then the last 3. Who knows? By the time it goes live, you guys will know. But I'll probably do those VHS list ones at the end of season 6. You know, like give me a little breather from having to put out the weekly Raymond reviews ones, because it's easier to do lists. But also give you guys some more Raymond content. Well, that's really all to say about that. The next week's episode is another syndication one, but it's going to have a little bit more to talk about in regards to a couple ongoing storylines in the show. And it'll be a fun little one involving Debra and the family. Till next time, guys.